Alan Dershowitz used his connections to Donald Trump to arrange access to pardons and commutations for his clients. Now, how much he got paid for the work that he did for his clients is pretty unclear. He claims that he just charged his usual fees in most cases, even donated some of those fees to charity, but he was not specific when he said so. But I do think it's important to understand how he did use his connections to get pretty terrible people off easy, especially when you consider the crimes they committed. Now, I'm gonna start off with the most egregious, and I do wanna note that this was the one instance where Dershowitz was looking for clemency, and luckily he did not get it for his client. And the client in question is a Lebanese American businessman named George Nader, who actually pleaded guilty to child pornography charges, not once. Okay, he had been charged with child pornography several times throughout the years. Dershowitz was seeking a deal where Nader, who again pleaded guilty to child pornography charges, would be freed from prison in return to resuming behind the scenes Middle East talks. Because after he was imprisoned for child molestation and child pornography charges a few times, he was still able to engage in Middle East peace talks where he was representing Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So you have these kinds of people negotiating these kinds of so-called peace deals. He was in prison. So he, by the way, was facing the new child pornography charges. That's why he ended up in prison, and that's why Dershowitz was trying to get clemency. But Trump actually turned that offer down because he ended up being one of the many people who cooperated in Mueller's investigation, and Trump was really salty about that. So real quick, Jonathan Jeffers, who's the lawyer representing George Nader, said this: "We understand that Dershowitz was seeking clemency on behalf of Nader and that he was rejected for the sole reason that Nader had cooperated in the Mueller investigation." And by the way, this guy is so awful. Now, even though Trump did not give him clemency for a ridiculous purpose, I'm glad that that happened, because in 1985, he was charged with importing child pornography into the United States. That case was actually dismissed based on a technicality. 1991, he was charged for child porn again and convicted. 1993, he was charged with child molestation in the Czech Republic. He received a 1-year prison sentence. And again, he later became an advisor to Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Great person to represent. Yeah,
brilliant. This is Alan Dershowitz's homie, and once again, Alan Dershowitz, big old supporter of Israeli occupation, has been on the wrong side of that issue. Thinks that like people against occupation, including Jewish organizations, are like anti-Semitic. They're self-hating. Like the guy has just been the propeller of some of the most conservative, warmongering stances for the United States in that region. And now you got this. And look, I really don't like talking about this issue because I just don't want to trigger Alan Dershowitz claiming that he has a quote perfect sex life, which is literally what he said when he was asked about why he was on the Epstein flight logs. And I'm like I don't have enough toothpaste. So, but like the idea, and Anna, we've talked about this before, but the ways in which the conspiracies around Democrats always come back to like child sex trafficking and this obsession with child sexual assault, which is a serious issue that is cheapened every time it's thrown around. But like this is straight up these are Trump's boys. These are Trump's homies. Epstein, Nader, Dershowitz. Like, come on, how much of your conspiracy is a giant projection? Please look in the mirror. Please look into your own people.
Well, remember, Dershowitz was the one who literally wrote an op-ed defending the idea of an adult male having sex with a teenage girl. I mean, we talked about that on the show before. So, I mean, for all of those QAnon people who, at least pretend to care about child victimization and trafficking and all of that, take a good hard look at the political party that you guys are supporting and representing. The political party that you guys are trying to fight for, because they're full of all sorts of creeps, including Dershowitz, including this, George Nader guy who has gotten in trouble with the law, not just here in the United States, but in other countries because of how he victimized children. This is something that we saw happening with the Trump administration over and over again, and it was beyond infuriating to hear unfounded claims made against their political opponents when this is the kind of stuff they engaged in. And by the way, I gave you an example of someone who did not receive clemency from Donald Trump, but Dershowitz did play a pivotal role in getting all sorts of shady scammers and fraudsters either clemency or a pardon. So as the New York Times reports, he played a role in at least 12 clemency grants, including 2 pardons, which wipe out convictions, and 10 commutations, which reduce prison sentences, while also helping to win a temporary reprieve from sanctions for an Israeli mining billionaire. And I'm gonna read you the descriptions of the people who were rewarded in this case, and the crimes that they had engaged in, because there is a common theme here. Commutations to 3 people on whose behalf Dershowitz personally lobbied Trump after working on cases with Jewish prisoners' rights groups. They included 2 New York real estate investors who had been convicted of defrauding more than 250 investors out of $23 million, and a former executive at a kosher meatpacking plant who was convicted in 2009 of bank fraud. I mean, these are the kinds of crimes that you can totally see Donald Trump committing himself. So it's like, wait a minute. Scam people? They're in prison because they scammed people? Pardon, there's more. A commutation for a New Jersey man who was sentenced in 2013 to 24 years in prison for charges related to a Ponzi-style real estate scheme that caused $200 million in losses. So Trump's got a warm place in his heart for those types of people. And war criminals, of course. People who commit war crimes, like killing civilians intentionally. He loves them too.
He loves them. Oh my gosh. Well, he's got to do business with someone, as is in his post-presidential career, is just getting off the ground. So you got to have more grifters around you. I'm sure that's probably why a lot of these people weren't, nominated to office, or because they had these records, and now they're absolved. So cool, game on. Also, Dershowitz represented a man who killed someone when he was 18 years old, right? When he was very young. Well, that man happens to be black. That man was put to death in the final days of the Trump administration. That man, there was no consideration for him. He's been in jail since he was 18. Just like an unprecedented number of other death row inmates who were put to death in just a murderous spree of the federal government. That was one person that Dershowitz just couldn't help. I wonder why. But this is, again, Scooter Libby gets pardoned. I mean, this is all like, you talk about the swamp, or people who even insist that, like, well, Trump was a really big departure from the Republican Party. No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. He's a very useful tool for them.
For sure, he was way more overt. He was willing to say the quiet parts out loud. Yeah. That's the only difference between Donald Trump and what we saw with traditional Republicans in the lead up to Donald Trump.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.